Design. Voice of God. My people, I haven't seen some of you in a long time. Thank you all very much for having me back today. A key 10 case. I am presenting a key 10 case. So this is an unusual case, which I think is incredibly important that we all think about this. And I'll wrap up by talking about that at the end. But this case started life with a fella by the name of Dane Smith coming to some lawyer who said he had a report of his employer cheating the United States government. And that first lawyer couldn't handle the case. Now, for those of you that don't completely understand KETAM, I can tell you that you have to file it under seal, and you really, really, really want the Department of Justice to become involved and get involved in the case. And if that doesn't happen, it's bad. And this case was on the verge of the United States rejecting an interest in this case, and that a lawyer being overwhelmed by this under seal case. And they came to the Kabateck firm and Niall, McCarthy, Justin Berger, and others. And they said, we've got a problem here, and it's a serious issue, and we're being ignored. And Niall took on the case, and they started to litigate it. And what the case is about is VMware is probably the largest corporation in America that you've never heard of. But they have software and hardware solutions which will take as many as 10 servers and combine it into one, and provide important computer informational systems for private business and for governments. And the federal law requires that if you enter into a contract with the United States government, you have to give them effectively favored nation status on the amount of the contract. And that means you can't charge the US government more than you charge other similarly situated private entities and governments for exactly the same services or products. And VMware was seemingly on a wholesale basis going across the country selling to the federal government through the Government Services Agency products and services, and they were charging them more than private industries. For example, they were charging them significantly more than eBay. They were charging the United States Navy more than they was charging the Ministry of Defense of Great Britain, sometimes as much as 70% more. Millions and millions of dollars stealing from taxpayers, stealing from us. And Niall started to bring this case to the interest of the Department of Justice, and they got involved. And that's the first important step in this kind of a case, is getting the government involved. But then something happened that was unbelievable. A lawyer for the Department of Justice, who turns out to be a former civil defense lawyer, wanted to settle the case cheap. And without Niall knowing, he made a $30 million demand on VMware, who was probably the happiest day of their life. And they countered at $5 million, and this lawyer was willing to settle the case for $15 million, $15 million. And they were in the process of settling this case when Niall and his team went and objected, and the lawyer could care less. The DOJ lawyer could care less. And so they started on a campaign around the country to find every single former VMware employee that they could, and they interviewed every single former VMware employee that they could who was involved in sales. And they turned up emails, and they turned up internal documents which absolutely concluded that this was a known scam, that they knew inside this company that they were cheating the federal government and all of us out of millions of dollars. But that wasn't enough for the Department of Justice. They still wanted to settle this case cheap. So Niall, a little bit out of deep throat, out of Watergate, goes and finds in Boston a federal auditor who had looked into this and found out that there was wrongdoing going on at the highest levels. And with that, the Kabateck firm used their political contacts and influence to get the Department of Justice to remove this lawyer from the case. and to let Neil and another lawyer take this case over. And what ultimately happened was a settlement in the range of $75 million. And for those of you that don't understand this area of law, that means over $60 million went to the federal government. That went back to the taxpayers. Now, there's still an ongoing case for the whistleblower, because that whistleblower who came to Neil and said, I need help, the lawyer isn't doing what he needs to do. That whistleblower had not only been terminated, but he had been receiving death threats. And Neil is still representing him in a separate lawsuit against this company. Now, why is this important? Because I know that there are significant cases here today with significant verdicts. But I want you to think about one thing, is we're bigger than just individual cases. And it's important for all of us to remember that these kinds of impact cases, this case went on for 5 years and cost the Kabateck firm over $1 million in costs and expenses. These kind of impact cases impact all of us, and they impact us on a political basis, because when you talk to your assembly members, your legislators, your congresspeople, when you talk to them and you talk about these kinds of cases, they make a difference, because this makes a big difference to people, and it shows that lawyers actually do something that help a wide basis and a wide number of people. So please consider that. I'm very proud to have been able to present this for Neil and for his firm.